Welcome back to the Tiger Den podcast, where we break down the biggest trends in sports media. I'm Nathan Inman, and I'm joined by my amazing co-hosts.
Made Mirren.
I'm Tessa Miller.
And I'm Chris Perry.
Today, we'll dive into the chapter 31 of Billings and Harding's Communicating Like Legitimacy and Visibility. In this chapter, we explore the intricate ways in which sports organizations, athletes, and media outlets shape narratives to build credibility, secure visibility, and influence public perception in an increasingly competitive media world. But it's not just about branding and performance. Sports have become a powerful tool for social change. From creating awareness for marginalized communities to fostering conversations around pressing issues, the sports world is using its platform like never before. Join us as we break down how visibility and legitimacy are crafted in today's sports media landscape and how athletes and teams are leveraging their influence for a greater impact.
Yeah, so I think the idea of legitimacy in sports media is all about credibility, and that goes to how teams, leagues, and athletes all establish themselves as authentic and trustworthy. And I feel like a lot of this comes down to strategic communication, PR, and branding.
Yeah, and legitimacy isn't just about performance. It's also about how an organization presents itself, whether it's through social media, community engagement, and or media coverage. So take expansion teams like Charlotte FC and the Vegas Golden Knights, for example. Charlotte FC built a strong local presence with fan events, social media engagement, and hype around their inaugural season, quickly becoming a vital part of the city sports culture. Whereas the Vegas Golden Knights, while making an immediate impact by reaching the Stanley Cup final in their first season, also stood out with their unique marketing because they embraced Vegas's entertainment culture, creating a memorable game day experience with like flashy promotions and engaging social media. So they did so by selling not just hockey, but also an experience that they established themselves as a legitimate HNL force right from the start, or
Yeah,
NHL,
that
sorry.
that's a great point. It's also why teams work so hard on their storytelling. They craft narratives that make them seem like contenders even before they've even won anything. Look at the Detroit Lions this season, for example. After years of struggling, their branding and media strategy helped shift public perception before they even took the field.
Yeah, Nathan, I think public perception's a big thing now. And I mean, I think that leads into our next topic pretty well, which is visibility in the digital age. Um, I guess the best way to describe visibility is like how social media has been taking over society. In today's sports media world, um, like social media helps people to be seen as good. I mean, it can also have negative side effects as well, but a lot of people are using it to their benefit. I mean, with the rise of social media, athletes and teams just in general have more control over their visibility to a broader audience.
Yeah, and definitely, I feel like in the past, like mainstream media had full control over which teams and athletes received what coverage. But I feel like now athletes like Travis Kelce and LeBron James, they're no longer relying on traditional outlets to tell their stories. Now they've taken the reins through social media. I mean, they actively shape their own narratives, engage directly with their fan bases, and build their own visibility. I feel like it's not just about waiting for ESPN to notice them anymore. They're kind of creating their own spotlight whenever they want.
Yeah, Aiden, I agree. And I think that that can also apply to teams as well. Like, take Colorado football under Coach Prime, for example, a program that barely made national headlines just a few years ago. And now it's constantly trending. And that's all due to a calculated media strategy centered around Deion Sanders' like larger than life personality that he presents. So his presence and media savvy has definitely transformed the Colorado into a household name now. And don't get me wrong, the athletes deserve credit too. Like the media buzz is partly driven by the team's athletic talent and potential, but the real driving force behind all the publicity is how Coach Prime has leveraged the media, making sure that the spotlight stayed on him and his program as Colorado prepared for the season. So, for instance, like his bold statements and entertaining press conferences and like all his viral moments on social media really just kept the attention on Colorado long before the season even started this year.
Yeah, it's actually really crazy how much impact that has had. Look at how Prime's presence transformed Colorado into one of the most talked about teams in college football. Their visibility skyrocketed, which led to more national TV games, bigger recruiting classes, and higher engagement across all platforms. And that was even while they were going 4-8 in their first season. They still had that giant brand, even though the team took time to really build up to be what could be a really big contender in the coming years.
Yeah, and I think it's good to talk a lot about visibility and social media and how the two coincide. Um, and I think like Colorado, for example, I mean that's a great example, but like generally speaking on visibility, like I think that's a good primer for our next topic, which is media narratives and reputation management. And the two kind of align with each other. But in this section, we're kind of talking about more how sports media in general frames certain narratives, if you will, or the way an athlete or team is covered can shape public perception in different ways that can last for years.
Yeah, for example, the way Serena Williams was covered in the media compared to her male counterparts. She's often framed through a lens of controversy or intensity rather than dominance and success. That's something we see, across a broad spectrum of male and female sports. The way that males and females are covered really completely different. If you look at a Sports Illustrated magazine, for example, the only time a female athlete is usually on the cover is usually in the swimsuit edition, which is really unfortunate because they have their sports they're really competitive in, and yet we're not showcasing their talents in that way. And that's a prime example of how media narratives influence legitimacy and visibility.
Yeah, Nathan, and I think that sometimes even teams or leagues will push back. So, like for example, when the NBA faced criticism over load management, they kind of shifted the conversation by emphasizing player health and longevity rather than kind of just focusing on the players missing games. So, I think it's also about all about shaping the narrative to kind of benefit the organization in the media as well.
Yeah, and one of the biggest takeaways from this chapter is really how social media has changed the way sports organizations communicate legitimacy and visibility. The role of it is much more than it was 5, 10 years ago. And it's no longer just about game performance, it's about content, it's about branding, it's about engagement with fans.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I feel like you could take a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, they've built a strong online presence by sharing behind the scenes content, fan interactions, and they even incorporate memes and humor into all of their posts. I mean, this helps them stay relevant even when they're not on top of the standings. I mean, I feel like their social media team understands that visibility isn't just about winning, it's about staying connected with fans. I mean, keeping the conversation going, whether it's through highlights, memes, or fan-driven content.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that every team has to be thinking about right now because if you're not engaging with fans online, like you're invisible essentially. So I think that that's why leagues like the NFL and the NBA are investing so much into digital content and have so many people working jobs in that position now because social media really is where the conversation is happening.
Yeah, and I think it's good, Tessa, that you emphasize how much like the NFL and NBA are investing into content. Um, like it really makes me think. I mean, with how social content is now, like, do we really need traditional sports media, whether that be ESPN, Fox Sports? Like, I wonder what the future is going to be for those programs with socials out there. I mean, it's just a hypothetical question, but it's curious to think about.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like, however, not all of it's always like positive. I feel like increased visibility also brings increased pressure. Athletes and teams are constantly in the spotlight. Even a single misstep can quickly damage their legitimacy and reputation. For example, I feel like when NBA star Kyrie Irving faced backlash for controversial statements and actions, his public image kind of took a significant hit, proving how quickly the wrong can erode the credibility.
Yeah, you're right, Aiden. I mean, kind of like with everything we've discussed so far, with the good, there's also the bad. Um, a specific example, I'm going to stay within the NBA, is I'm thinking about Ja Morant, and how there's a video of him that aired on social media that kind of hurt his career, if you will, or his reputation or his legitimacy. And it just kind of shows how one post can negatively impact someone. So I mean that's difficult to keep in the back of your mind all the time when you're dealing with content.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you both more. Like Aiden pointing out Kyrie and then Chris pointing out John Morant, like it's all a double-edged sword. So while social media does give these athletes a platform, it also opens them up to criticism, misinformation, and even harassment online. Like we've seen players take social media breaks just to avoid the constant negativity or to even just avoid any possibility of harming their public image. So it's just always kind of important to see the give or take in those situations for sure. But I feel like that's kind of a good stopping point. So to sum it all up, legitimacy and visibility in sports media aren't just about wins and losses anymore. It's about branding, storytelling, and engagement. So nowadays, if you're not actively managing your public perception, you're falling behind.
Yeah, and speaking of managing sports communication, we've got a really special guest joining us, Jay Denning from Auburn. Jay is a player on the Auburn wheelchair basketball team, and he has an incredible story to share with us. Born without the use of his legs, Jay has never let that slow him down. He was a multi-sport athlete in high school and even set a Paralympic national record in javelin at just 14 years old, despite never having thrown before.
Yeah, Jay's journey is a perfect example how legitimacy and visibility matter, not just for teams and leagues, but for individual athletes as well. He's working towards competing in the Paralympics, and we're excited to hear his perspective on navigating sports media as an adaptive athlete.
All right, welcome back to the Tiger Den. We're excited to be joined by a very special guest today, Jay Denning, a player on the Auburn wheelchair basketball team. Jay's journey in sports is nothing short of incredible. Born without the use of his lower extremities, he didn't let that stop him from excelling as a multi-sport athlete in high school. At just 14, he set a Paralympic national record in javelin, despite never having thrown before. Now his main goal is to one day compete in the Paralympics. Jay, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Would you be willing to share a little bit more about yourself and what led you to pursue wheelchair basketball at Auburn?
Hey, thanks for having me on. A little bit more about myself. So, yeah, I was born without any feeling in my lower half of my body through lumbocercal which is the missing three bones of my lumbar region in my spine, which led to, the paralysis in my legs, along with scoliosis and club feet. So, with that being said, I grew up in a household where I had a great, loving mom, but she was like, I'm not going to let you use your disability as an excuse. So what does she do? She found an organization that helps teach young adults or just people with disabilities how to live normal and do daily activities with their disabilities. So with that, I'm able to drive a car. I'm in college, so I have a car. I know how to do my bills. I cook for myself. Like everything that you can do in your daily life, I've been taught to do. So it's just like that's what I've been through. And then now that I'm here at Auburn, I'm pursuing a degree in graphic design because, I'm an artist as well as, I'd say I'm a decent spokesperson. So graphic design was a good choice for me. And then Auburn has a wheelchair basketball team. So those two paths just kind of, merged together.
Awesome. What's up, Jay? Aiden here. So we talked some about how new media plays a role in the legitimacy of adapted sports. Do you think social media and other platforms have helped increase awareness and visibility for wheelchair basketball?
For sure. Most definitely, like without question. Because when I first started, there there wasn't a lot of exposure for adaptive sports. Whenever I would tell anyone at my school, I mean, it's the same way now, but at least people are like, oh, yeah, I know about wheelchair basketball. But growing up, no one knew that there was an adaptive sport for things like basketball or track or any of the other events that have actually been around for like 50 plus years. So I think social media has definitely helped with exposure, letting folks know that hey, this is here for you. The only problem is, accessing it.
Hey Jay, I'm Tessa. So you kind of touched on it a little bit for how it's grown and everything, but how do you think the growing presence of adaptive sports content on platforms like YouTube and Instagram and all of that is kind of influencing the younger generation's interest in maybe getting involved in these types of sports? And what role do you think that interest plays in kind of the future growth of wheelchair basketball as a whole?
I think in a way, it's definitely positive because, like I just said, as opposed to when I first started, they actually have a chance to know about it without, my mom literally just stumbled onto someone's organization. Meanwhile, kids and parents nowadays can look up the NWBA or, adaptive sports associations, and they can just, it's easier to connect to other communities. And with that being said, it's just more exposure on top of exposure because the more that's out there, the easier it is to consume, the easier it is to help bring everyone together as a community for those who like feel they might not belong anywhere.
Jay, Chris here. For kind of our viewers out there who don't know much about adaptive sports in general, um, like, are there a lot of organizations and community initiatives out there like that are available for this sort of participation? Like, what sort of programs are available for people to get involved from a younger age? Like, what was the program that you got involved in? I'm just curious.
So I definitely know that different states have their own, home organizations. For me, it was a nonprofit called Able Youth, Athletes Building Life Experiences. And that's based in Nashville, Tennessee. It was founded by Rick Slaughter, who is also a paraplegic man, and he did it to help, help create a sense of belonging, help teach folks who have disabilities that they can still do whatever they want to do. But I also know that uh, the IWBF, which is the head organization over adaptive sports, more like the Paralympics and Paralympic wheelchair basketball and all that, that is the main organization. And then you have, children organizations, like I said, throughout the United States. Um, that part, I don't know, like different ones in other states, but here in Birmingham, I definitely know we have Lakeshore. Uh, that the Lakeshore Foundation, that's a adaptive, company that everyone can become a part of. They have wheelchair basketball, track and field, rugby, a ton of sports. And I know Atlanta Blaze Sports, they have that's their company, but it's all about once you find one, it pretty much is like a cobweb. It's like a web. You go from one to another. They're all interconnected, and so it's just a really easy way for you to just reach out to college players, Paralympic players, and staff of the teams. So we have Coach Rob, Sophie Louveday, who is our social media expert. It's just it depends on where you are, because some states haven't even set up a foundation like that.
I know, Jay, you mentioned that your mom got you into those organizations at an early age, but I know that many kids may be discouraged by their disabilities, often feeling left out of certain activities and sports. So, how important was it for you to have sports to be able to participate in growing up?
Um, it was very important because not only in school I would watch other kids, play basketball or football, and I would be like, "What can I do?" And then that's when I got introduced into wheelchair basketball, and just like I've been just kind of reiterating this whole time, it allowed me to understand that hey, there are opportunities out there for me to be seen in the same light as able-bodied players. So for kids who may feel discouraged by their disabilities, I just say be comfortable with who you are because it opens up so many more doors that you don't know about yet. And yeah, in that moment, it may seem kind of foggy and kind of cut off and dead ended, but the more confidence you have in yourself as a person and probably building on top of athletics, you know, dude, the world is your oyster at that point.
Hey Jay, it's Tessa again. So I played on the women's team here at Clemson, and we actually got the opportunity this past summer to go and like play with an organization that did wheelchair basketball. Like some of my teammates actually got to like play alongside each other, and we kind of scrimmage each like everyone, and it was so hard. Like the whole time we were talking about how much respect we had because we were like, we play actual basketball. I swear this is harder. Like everything, but we had no idea what it was like before. And then after going there, it was just an amazing experience, and it kind of just opened our eyes. And so, like with all that being said, how new media is supposed to be kind of like putting it out there and making things more visible for viewers. Do you think that that has led to more opportunities and is increasing a lot of awareness? Like, have you felt any personal change in opportunity or growth, like just from your story?
I definitely have just getting into Auburn, without even being in Able Youth, I would not have had the chance to meet Coach Rob, understand what, college level basketball is, or even Paralympic basketball, because he was the head coach for the Paralympic team. So that connections on top of connections, like what I said in the last question, um, it definitely plays a part, and it definitely helps a lot of kids because the community is so tight woven that words can't even describe how just starting, getting your foot in is an immediate advantage. You know, it builds character, it builds confidence. It helps you become a well-rounded individual as well. So,
Jay, this is kind of a difficult, loaded question. But I know now you've been involved in adaptive sports for a while now. Um, like, how do you see adaptive sports kind of evolving over the next 10, maybe 20 years? I mean, like with those you've interacted with, like, are there certain goals that you guys share, that you hope for things to look like in the future, I guess?
um, yeah. So with that question, I'll just I'll keep it to my personal experience right now. So for the Auburn wheelchair basketball team, we play games in the Beard Eves Memorial Coliseum, which is the same court that Charles Barkley played on. But not a lot of students know that we have a wheelchair basketball team. So a personal goal for us here is to continue to spread awareness, around the campus or just with wheelchair basketball in general, to continue to bring fans into wheelchair basketball. So maybe like we fill out the Coliseum once again, or even just the blue section of it. Um, and then that goes into an even larger goal of just expanding wheelchair basketball. Because right now, only 11 to 13 colleges even have it. So getting it to where it's like able-bodied basketball, to where at least majority of colleges offer the opportunity to, instead of such a small pool.
Well, Jay, you kind of just answered my next question I had. So I was going to mention, there aren't many schools, including here at Clemson, that have a wheelchair basketball program or even any adaptive sports programs. So do you think that's something more schools should look into adding? And like, what sort of impact do you think that would have on differently able people?
Um, it definitely should be added. If not wheelchair basketball, just more adaptive sports. So we have like bocce, we have sled hockey, just because I know not everyone's love is basketball. So just having a variety out there in colleges allows more children to be interested in even trying to pursue adaptive sports in college. Because right now in the college division, it's just wheelchair basketball, track, and swimming, as far as my knowledge. Other than like once you get to like the Paralympic level, but right now it's just those three that mainly dominate the college scene. And so I definitely think more colleges could benefit from that because it brings in more students, obviously. Individuals would benefit from that because you won't be limited to just one or two sports. Then you actually get to, find your passion along with a degree. And so, yeah, that's my main answer for that.
Yeah, and I know with all of that, like, what advice would you give to young athletes with disabilities who want to get involved in competitive sports?
Be okay with failing. You know, that's kind of a general thing for everyone. You got to be okay with failure because the more you fail, the more opportunity there is for you to actually advance in something. So I used to not be able to shoot a basketball at all, but I kept practicing. And with every miss, I was like, okay, let me correct it at the angle or let me correct the release. You know, Even with track, you have a specific push you need to get. So it's just like, let me get the specific strength for it. Let me get my pace. It's just with each setback, there's a definite, comeback, and so it's just be okay with failing. Just like you got to be okay with failing in school because it helps you learn more. Um, don't get too down on yourself and, just give yourself grace.
Before we go, Jay, I just want to ask, can you explain to people who might not understand fully how wheelchair basketball works, the system? Because I know just in a little research I've done into it, there's like a point system where you can have 15 points on the court at one time. So can you just explain, the system behind that?
So with the classification system, it's different for junior varsity, college, and Paralympics. So in juniors, I think you can have around 5 points, which everyone is like a one, two, three, or four. In college, it's 14. So you have one, 1, 5, all the way to 4, 5. Um, Same thing with adults. But that classification system just explains the severity of someone's disability. So the lower the number, the higher the disability. The higher the severity. So my personal classification is a 1, 5 because I have no feeling in my lower half, as well as I don't have a lot of core function. So a 4, 5 would practically be an able body who can play wheelchair basketball just like a normal adaptive athlete. And then you have the in betweens of all of that. So someone with, let's say, a 1 would, and like for a lack of better terms, just have a some more severe disability than I do, to where at least I can lean side to side without assistance, but they would probably have to like push off their chair to get their self recentered, as opposed to everyone else who's above that who can probably move because of like all their core.
Well, Jay, we just want to thank you so much for sharing your experiences and insights with us. Your perspective has really helped us understand the impact of new media on adaptive sports and the growing opportunities for athletes in these sports. So we appreciate your time and everything that you're doing to advance the sport.
No problem, man. It was a pleasure to be here and meeting all of you.